The No Nonsense Roundtable. It's a weekly show broadcast on Rochester, New York's 50,000-watt iHeart radio station, News Radio Wham 1180. The host, Dom Genova, interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. What you are about to hear is a recording of a previous broadcast without the breaks and commercials. Now, here's host Dom Genova.
Well, welcome to another edition of the No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Genova, your host every Saturday, 10 a.m. right here on News Radio Wham 1180. And my guest today is an inductee of the Rochester Music Hall of Fame, which happens to have its induction ceremony tomorrow night. Tickets still available. And his name is Jeff Springut. I think a lot of people in Rochester know you from years ago when you had your, what would you call it, music establishment?
I would call it a saloon with great music and good food and volleyball courts, and we had a lot of fun.
So for those of us like me who've only been here for 30 years, right. Why don't you tell us about those days and what it was like and what you did?
Well, the Red Creek, we opened it up on Jefferson Road. At the time, Jefferson Road was a two-lane highway, kind of kitty corner across from, they were building RIT, and it wasn't finished. And we were looking for a place in Rochester where people could come and gather, listen to music, and be with friends and enjoy themselves in a very casual manner. Now, this was back at the end of '69. We opened up on January 1, 1970. Actually, I got my liquor license on my birthday, April 10th of 1970. And for the first year, we just played tapes. People came out. There was no place for young people to gather and have a cold drink and have some fun. Drinking age was 18 at the time. And it wasn't until about a year later when another bar opened up down the street called the Orange Monkey, and they had live music 7 nights a week for free. But all their music was top 40. And they did a great job, and they were very successful, and we got nervous because all of a sudden we were going to have competition. So we said, well, our style is a little different. It's not top 40. It's more original rock and roll music. And we had a band called Joshua, who was the precursor to Duke Jupiter, open up that night. We had a big sign out front that said Joshua Rocks, and we had mood torches on either side of the sign, and all their fans. Joshua was a very popular band at the time, and we packed the place, and that started our live music presentations at the Red Creek. And I knew a fellow in Boston, Harry Chickles, who ended up being a good friend, and he managed and booked several Boston bands. So we started bringing in Boston blues bands. There was the Caldwell Winfield Blues Band and John Lee Hooker, Harry worked with. And that's how we really started our live music presentations. And then over the years, it became known as a great place to play, great audiences, and it kept going.
I know you were on the show before and you told the story, but I love the story. You had a way of treating your customers and your loyal customers, and you were good to them and they were good to you. So tell the story again about the band.
Please help me, Don.
Please tell the story.
It's a great story.
It's a great story.
It is a good story. Well, eventually we enlarged after a fire. A couple of years later, we enlarged the creek. We had more national acts coming in, and one of those acts was U2. And because we were very busy for lunch and very busy for dinner, we had a schedule that the bands had to adhere to when they came in to set up and do sound check. And I'll try to make this brief because it gets a little tiring after a while, but it is a good story. So the U2 band, were about 2 hours late in arriving, and the tour manager was this Irish gentleman who came in with a big chip on his shoulder and basically busted my chops all day long. They were late. We had to juggle everything. Time came for the sound check. The band is in the parking lot. This is U2. The stage is all set, and he wanted the whole room
evacuated.
I was going to use the same word, evacuated. And I understand bands are very fussy when they do their sound check. They don't want the audience in the room. So we cleared about 75, 85 people. We had a dining room on the other side of the building. We called it the greenhouse dining room. And we moved everybody out, and we put their little name tags on the tables. And there were two women up on the balcony who came in every day. They were our regular customers. They were bank tellers down at, I think back then it was called Security Trust Company in Southtown Plaza. And they were friends, and they would come in every day and drink their Presbyterians. And so I said to the fella in the band, I said, look, I moved everybody out, and those two women up on the balcony, they don't care if it's you two, you three, you and me, baby. And you're going to hit two chords on the guitar. It's going to be so loud that they're going to leave. Well, the guy puts his hands on his hips, and he looks up to me. He was about 1.5 feet shorter than I am. And he looks at me straight in the eye, and he said, everybody out, or we don't play. And it was like all day long, this nyit, 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 nyit. He was in my face. It's like with his finger, we need this, we need that. And so I just looked down at him, and I said, I took my hand and I waved it across my face kind of, and I said, see ya. And they left.
That's great.
The band never came in the building. The stage was set. They had to rip down all the equipment, and we had to refund everybody's money.
I love that.
And that's the U2 story.
Oh, I love that story.
I'm not particularly proud of firing a band of any stature, but I stood up for my loyal customers.
Right. Because in the end, you got to do what's right.
I thought so.
Well, that's a great story.
Yeah,
that's going to make a great short take for my YouTubes, I'll tell you right now.
It's in their book, one of their books. They talked about the date in Rochester that they almost played but didn't play.
No,
I don't know if they went into great detail, but that was the story.
Now, you morphed from that into, well, the big thing we're going to be talking about is the Lilac Festival.
True. Well, I started working with the county and the city on various projects that they had. They were looking for somebody to do, put large-scale events together for the community. And really running the Red Creek for as long as I did, because we ended up opening it and keeping open for almost 30 years, really was a project of ongoing promotion and staying on top of the trends and trying to appeal to people.
What's the first promotional thing you did outside of the establishment you had?
I think it could have been the Yankee Doodle Doo Festival for the city of Rochester. It was downtown. Yep, they wanted to do a 4th of July event. I think they had Jeff Tyzik's big band playing, and we also brought in Duke Jupiter. And it took place in a tent that is where the convention center is now.
Okay.
And we had a hot air balloon tethered that was giving rides up and down. And, it probably attracted 3,000 or 4,000 people at the time. And that was probably one of the first community events that we did.
So did they reach out to you, or did you reach out to them?
Oh, they reached out to me. I couldn't have thought of that.
Okay. So
the Yankee Doodle Doo Festival?
Well, somebody gives you a call.
There were people on the committee that wanted to do a watermelon seed spitting contest. They were old timers, and they had some cute ideas, and I went along with it. I mean, it's their party, and they just needed somebody to organize it. And I really had been organizing events since I was in high school. And not anything of grand scale like that, but I always took a lot of joy. Music is really my background, and I really enjoy listening to older music and new music and discovering new bands and then presenting them to people around the community and sometimes outside of our community and just bringing people together to have some fun.
We'll be right back after this. Well, we're back with Jeff Springut, who is an inductee of the Rochester Music Hall of Fame. The induction ceremony is Sunday for 2023. And he is a music producer. He used to own the Red Creek Inn in Henrietta, and he is the producer of the Lilac Festival, which is coming up on May 12th for a few days. So, and talk to me about the history of the Lilac Festival.
Well, this is the 125th year of the Lilac Festival. So my involvement doesn't go back that long, I hate to tell you. But I will tell you that when I was growing up in Rochester, we used to go to Lilac Sunday all the time. And I think back then, I think they waited to see when the lilacs were going to bloom, had a couple weeks notice, and they said, okay, 2 weeks from now, it's going to be Lilac Sunday. And that was it. And we'd all go out to the park, my family and friends, and enjoy the park and the lilacs, as people still do today. And then there came a point in time where I was friendly with the previous promoter of the event, and he had asked me if I'd be interested in helping program the national talent for the festival. So I said, sure, I can give it a shot. And I remember probably the most pleasing weekend that I promoted and booked the shows for were 3 shows in Highland Bowl during the Lilac Festival. And in 1 week, we had the Bare Naked Ladies, I had Little Richard, and I had Johnny Cash.
Wow.
Yeah, all for very low tickets. And they were 3 stellar shows, and people had a lot of fun.
Well, I mean, for anybody who hasn't, I can't imagine anybody hasn't been to the Lilac Festival. It's more than the music; it's the food. I mean, you have so much stuff. There's a lot
going on.
Let's do a little retail here.
So about 12 years ago, this will be our 12th year producing the Lilac Festival. And people ask me, what does that mean when you say you produce the Lilac Festival? And I say, well, you look at the park today, and you look at the park when Lilac Festival opens. We are responsible for everything that you see, from the tents to the porta-johns to the marketing to the entertainment to the food vendors, security, the whole shooting match. The festival is owned by the city and the county, and they contract with my company to produce it. And fortunately, they seem to be happy with the job that we've been doing, because they keep asking me to come back and continue doing it. So this year we'll have about 87 bands playing over the 10 days. That includes all the local bands, the national acts, and the buskers in the park and everything. We take a lot of time and care trying to curate, really, the different bands and offer something for almost everybody, from Seniors Day to there's a couple of favorite bands that are playing this year. Probably the band that appeals to the youngest audience is called Pigeons Playing Ping Pong. And so this year we're calling them Pigeons Playing Ping Pong in the Park. And they're playing on the first night, opening night, Friday night. And then one of my favorite bands and dear friends, since we had them at the Red Creek back in the late 70s, was a band called Roomful of Blues. And they were a 7 or 8 piece Kansas City swing rhythm and blues band. And they were one of the first bands that came out with a big horn section. There's a great guitar player and singer named Duke Robillard, who still performs on his own. Greg Piccolo is the tenor player. And we had so many good times at the Red Creek. I convinced those fellas to come back this year on the second Friday, the 19th, to play a set for us. And there's still a working band called Roomful of Blues that a couple of the players in the band that's playing for us play in. So for technical reasons, they can't say Roomful of Blues is playing. They're calling them the founders of Roomful of Blues, six original members. And so they're playing on that Friday, just ahead of a band that I discovered in Austin about 6 years ago called The Record Company. Now, these guys are a trio, but they rock out. I happened to see them in a small patio bar in Austin. I happened to stroll into it. I went, who are these guys? and I hired him on the spot. I've brought back over the years, about 10 bands that I've heard in Austin at South by Southwest. So whenever I travel, I make it my business to see who's playing around, and musically that is, and try to catch some new music. So when I go to Austin, it's an event called South by Southwest. And there's about 3,500 bands that are playing there during the course of a week. So I kind of have to take a lot of time and listen to the bands that are playing, see where I want to go, and then I listen to friends who are there, and they say, well, go hear these guys, they're good. And one day a friend of mine said to me, he happens to live there, and I've known him for probably 15, 20 years. He said, hey, there's a buddy of mine playing down the street. I think you're really going to like him. Let's go down there and grab a beer and check him out. I was so knocked out by this band, I hired him on the spot to open up for a band that we had a party in the park. Not Robert Jr. Lockwood, but Robert Randolph.
Okay.
He's a pedal steel player. So we brought this fella in to play in front of Robert Randolph, and people at Party in the Park, after this fella played, said, who was that? What was that guy's name? Very impressive guy. His name was Gary Clark Jr. And he now is an international hotshot. I saw him play at Madison Square Garden about a year ago, opening up for Eric Clapton. So he's very popular. Nobody knew who this guy was when we had him at Party in the Park. So I like to introduce new talent, and it helps them out, and it helps me bring new music to Rochester.
Listening to you, this is sort of like, I'm a baseball fan. This is sort of like being a baseball scout. You see
the analogy.
Yeah, you see somebody with some talent. So what is it about? Is it a different sound that they have, or cadence, or I mean, what do you see what do you see that other people don't see?
It's funny because I can't sing. I can barely talk today, and I can't play an instrument. Although when I was younger, I took lessons. But I'm grateful that I can hear. And when I hear somebody like that, it's a combination of all those things. It's stage presence, it's ability to perform, it's the relationship with the audience. It's a myriad of their talent. And so another one that I brought up from Austin was the Dixie Chicks before.
Wow.
This is when the one chick was kind of expelled from the band because she had some political problems way back then.
Yeah. I remember
I hired them on the spot. And like I say, there's about a dozen bands that I've brought up. And it's one of the things. I love listening to music, and I can hear.
Yeah.
So that's, fortunately, I can't hear my wife when she's 2 rooms away. But when I'm listening to a band, I can say, wow, these guys are good.
Yeah.
Could be women, whatever. And so I still enjoy that. I have since I was a little kid.
This is analogous, too, is something I had a conversation with Jeff Tysick one day, and I said, my personal view is not everybody plays the piano can make music. It's a difference between playing the piano and making music. And so what you're talking about is that people make music. But the one thing that you said that is kind of a relation to me is that their connection with the audience, too, that can be valuable.
Very important. Very important. There was a time when I was in Austin, and there was a band. I was in a hotel room, and there was a band. I thought it was a radio at first, like the next floor up. And I realized eventually that it was a band playing, and they were rehearsing. And I was going to complain to the front desk, but the music was so good that they were playing. I go, who are these guys? It was like some reggae and some Santana kind of music. And I was like, geez. And so I was at a conference, and the last night of the conference, they had a reception, and the reception room was right above the room where I was staying. So I went up there, and it was the band that I had heard rehearsing was playing. And I went, holy mackerel, every person in that band was more talented than the next. Mm-hmm. So I walked up to him, and I walked up to the drummer first, and I said, I don't often do this, but I come from the land of Gadd. Now, anybody who's a musician knows Steve Gadd.
Right.
And I said, you and the rest of your players are phenomenal because I don't often, that's the standard that I hold people to.
Uh-huh.
Okay. He said, I was just in the studio with Steve last week in L.A., and everybody in this band was like wonderful. And as it turned out, it was a band called Playing for Change.
Uh-huh.
And if your listeners aren't familiar, it's a long story of what they do and have accomplished. But Google Playing for Change, and Norman Lear has financed this band. They go around the world playing. It's difficult to explain, but go on their website. They travel around the world playing the same song with different people in different parts of the world. And it's a video experience and an audio experience. And then they open up music schools in underserved parts of the world. And they've opened up 4 of these schools. So Howard Schultz from Starbucks, I think, introduced them. I'm not sure who introduced who to Norman Lear or Howard Schultz, but they're a phenomenal bunch of people.
Good stuff. You're listening to the No Nonsense Roundtable. We'll see you after this. So we're back talking to Jeff Springut, who is the producer of the Lilac Festival, among other things. We'll talk about those later. But let's talk about the Lilac Festival. It's coming up on the 12th. And, well, let's remind everybody, too, I want to do a little retail here, is that Jeff is an inductee of the Rochester Music Hall of Fame, and the induction ceremony is tomorrow night, April 30th. Tickets are still available, and 2 people that I really admire and love are being inducted this year. And one of them is Fred Costello, the organist at the Red Wings. Much more than that, he's had a wonderful life for himself as a jazz musician and music teacher. And Wheeze, Brother Wheeze, is being inducted among some other people. And Garth Fagan is being inducted. And you can get tickets for as little as $31.
All well-deserved recognition. And don't forget, it's going to be at Kodak Hall at Eastman Theater.
Beautiful facility.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
I was just there the other night. And I don't think I've missed an induction since it started because, we like to support everybody here in town.
Well, I think what a lot of people don't understand is that it's not that somebody comes up and they get their award and they give 2 minutes of thank you and sit down and you give another award. There's performances. There's the induction ceremony itself, and then there's a performance that has to do with the person that's being inducted. So you're hearing things. I mean, Wheeze has he says he's going to come on the show and he's not going to prepare any remarks ahead of time. That alone's got to be worth $31.
Sure.
That'll
be interesting.
That'll be like
Freeform Wheeze.
Oh, yeah. Well, you look at the 2012 induction ceremony, and Gene Cornish is playing. I mean, so you see a performance as well as an induction. But let's talk a little bit more about the Lilac Festival.
Sure.
And coming up, and you have 87 bands. Hopefully, you're not going to throw out any of them.
No, I don't think.
I
don't think we'll do that. Well, there's some great music. You can listen.
Know, if nothing else, they know better. They're not
going to give me a hard time.
They're not going to give you a hard time.
Well, by and large, we always show a great deal of respect and appreciation for the performers who work for us.
Yes.
We go out of our way. Yes. Hopefully they realize it to make them comfortable while they're here and keep it very well organized and run a tight stage and whatnot. Yeah. So there's great music. It's all for free. Yeah. We have to mention the Lilac Festival has a quite sizable budget, and the festival is free to get into. Now, there's a few things that we do sell tickets for. We added a number of years ago a craft beer expo, which is on the second Saturday this year. There's probably 45 craft breweries. I think it's like $35, $40. You get a glass and you walk around and you can sample. It's supposed to be only 16 samples, but sometimes they bend the rules a little bit. But there's a lot of good beers. You talk to the people who are making the beers, who have brewed it, the brewmasters. There's a VIP session early, the first hour, where they bring in a special beer that they made just for the event. And then the first Saturday is our wine expo, also with about 45 area wineries and distilleries. And you get a chance to sample a lot of great New York State wines. So those are on the 2 Saturdays in our special events tent. Then, of course, I'm going to skip around a little bit, but the last Sunday, we have the oldest running race in Rochester history is the Lilac 5K and 10K, where there's nearly 3,000 people run in that race through Highland Park, down Highland Avenue to Brighton, and loops around and then comes back down Highland Avenue through the Lilacs. It's a beautiful route, and we've scheduled really good weather for that, and we always look forward to that as well.
We scheduled good weather
really,
for that.
We, from my lips to God's ears, of course. And then something new that we added this year is the health. Well, actually, we added it last year. Is the Health and Wellness Expo. Health and wellness, both physical and mental health, is the new buzzwords and the new thing in our world today. Most people are trying to get healthy and stay healthy. So we have exercise classes on Saturday and Sunday, the 20th and 21st of May, from 8:30 till about noon, right in front of the main stage. And then there's an expo in the park with about 40 vendors that all have some relationship to health and wellness. Mm-hmm. A real variety of things, everything from spas to blood pressure testing to mental health, options. And then there's a speaker series both days where there are 6 speakers each day. And all this is for free in the park. And the speakers are speaking about everything from financial planning for single dads, single moms. They're really touching on a bunch of very interesting topics. So the Lilac Festival definitely has expanded since we've been doing it. And every year we don't want to create new things every year because it drives my team crazy. But we've had a great response last year to the health and wellness as well as this year. So that's the last Saturday and Sunday, 20 and 21.
Yeah, as a marketing guy, I get this. A little something for everybody. But the one big thing, though, is food. Let's talk about the food, because everybody loves the food.
There is everything from trasher plates to effortlessly healthy. There are definitely many healthy selections. And I just met a fella the other day. I got to get the name correct. He does a Korean barbecue. And he's a Korean gentleman, and he told me he was the middle sibling, and as the middle sibling in his family, he helped his mom in the kitchen all the time. Right. And she made a recipe for the marinade for his barbecue. It's got like 20 ingredients in it. And he knew another food vendor in town who wanted to do the Korean barbecue thing. He sells them in bowls, and it's like layered with rice and then cabbage, and it's crunchy. And then there's these different layers of meat. You got beef or chicken or pulled pork. And so anyways, he was talking to this friend of his who said he wanted to put it on another product. And so the fellow went to the grocery store and picked up a bottle of Korean barbecue sauce. Uh-huh. And this guy looked at him and said, "You got to be kidding me. You're using that to put on your food? Uh-huh. Taste mine." And the guy said, after he tasted, he said, "I can't go anywhere else. Would you make it for me?" Uh-huh. So now he's making it for this other fella. Yeah. But he's going to be in the big top food tent.
Let's talk about some of the other food you got.
Great. I got to use my cheat sheet. That's because fine. There are all kinds of fresh fruit smoothies. There's your typical hots, hamburgers, Italian sausage. There's the big favorite, which is the giant turkey drumsticks.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
There's crepes. There's Macaroon does lobster mac and cheese. And he's got all these selections of gourmet mac and cheese. There's...
got some sweets there?
We have sweets. We have cheesecake. We have Abbott's ice cream, of course. Okay. I'm sorry. I misspoke. Abbott's frozen custard. Okay. There's a difference. The butterfat in custard. Okay. I know this from having known Don and Bob's
all right, there you go.
Years ago. The butterfat content in custard is much higher than ice cream.
Really?
Oh, yeah. That's what makes
That's why it tastes so good.
That's why it's rich and smooth. Ah. Yeah. And I'm sure I'm forgetting many, many more.
And you're saying garbage
plates.
plates.
Well, they call them trasher plates now.
Trasher plates. Yeah. Okay. Garbage plate thing.
They got all that.
There's probably somebody doing chicken French. I would think.
There's chicken French. There's artichokes French. There's Nino's gourmet Mexican tacos.
Okay.
There's
well, you had me.
You
had me at Korean barbecue.
I'm telling you.
So
yeah, great stuff. There's 45 different food vendors.
Well, one of the things you were saying before was about the beer, because I've gotten into IPAs, and I really don't want to go and spend $10 for 4 cans of something to see if I like it or not, because you could try the one can and not like it. So being able to go there and taste different beers.
That's the Craft Beer Expo. That's very popular. There's 2 sessions on, that's the second Saturday, the 20th, I believe. And we also have a craft beer tent where we have 5 taps and we rotate different craft beers. Every time a keg ends, we put a different craft on. The newest item food-wise is the Bully Hill Wine Grove, where we set up a whole section near the craft beer tent underneath the purple arches, where Bully Hill and a charcuterie and cheese fellow who's affiliated with Rubino's, Rochester Charcuterie and Cheese, I think he calls it. That's going to be a separate place just for charcuterie and cheese and Bully Hill wine, where you can pick up your charcuterie and cheese platter and sit there and enjoy it. It's actually modeled after Murray's Cheese in New York City in the Village, which is a world famous cheese, and they're cheesemongers, and they know their cheese and their charcuterie. We've wanted to do that for many years, and we're pleased to be able to do that this year.
You know, it took me like 2 years to understand that charcuterie was cheese and salami and not something that you wear.
Right. Well, there you go. Well, you're learning, Don. You're doing good.
I'm learning.
You're doing good.
I can't pronounce it, but I'm learning.
Right.
You're listening to the No Nonsense Roundtable. We'll see you after this. Well, we're talking to Jeff Springut, who is an inductee of the Rochester Music Hall of Fame, a former owner of the Red Creek Inn in Henrietta, and the producer of the Lilac Festival. Lots of stuff going on with that. So let's talk about some of the other things that you are promoting in Rochester.
Right.
Because it's not just I say just. You got this enormous. It's like the invasion of Normandy, for God's sakes.
It's the Lilac Festival.
It's just the Lilac Festival. Let's talk about some of these other things.
The Lilac Festival does have many pieces and parts, and as the days go by, I said, well, it's time to slow down a little bit, and so my way of slowing down, and it's kind of a funny way, because now we're putting on concerts at Kodak Center on Ridge Road. We had Lyle Lovett and John Hyatt there last year. We do Almost Queen there. We've got Hot Tuna coming up there with a full band in the fall. And then we came across this great venue in Parrington on the corner of Aralt and Turk Hill Road. It's right behind the Parrington Community Center, and they call it the Parrington Center Park Amphitheater. It's a sleeping beauty in terms of a venue to put on shows and more importantly, to go see a show. So I got in touch with, actually the people from Parrington reached out to me a few months back and said, Jeff, would you be interested in helping us out and put on some real shows out in this venue? They've been doing a lot of local bands every Sunday night for free, and they're going to continue to do that. And I said, absolutely, I'd love to look at it and talk to you. And we made some great arrangements. And on June 1st, we have Collective Soul. And on June 11th, we have the Wood Brothers with Shovels and Rope. Both of those shows are selling very well. And you can bring your own chair or blanket. There'll be full bars out there. There's a VIP section. We'll have food trucks. And once you go there, you're going to say, wow, this is a beautiful venue.
You were saying it holds like 3,000 people?
About 3,000 people, yep.
So anybody, to put this in perspective, the Kodak Hall at Eastman Theater holds about 2,500. So
Correct.
This is a sizable.
Yeah.
What, is it set up like CMAC? Is it a little bit like that?
Yeah. There's no roof over it, but it's terraced. They carved out of a hill, and there's cement walkways. It's very nicely organized. There's a lot of grass to sit on. As I say, you can bring your own chair or your own blanket. The VIP section, we will have chairs there in the first 5 or 6 rows for those people who want that. And it's a great venue. The backdrop is there's some woods right behind it. And it's just really beautiful once people discover it. So we're hoping to add a few more shows there this summer, and we're starting to plan now for 2024.
Well, that's one of the great things about being here. Nina and I start off we're from New York, but we lived in Charlotte for a long time. And in North Carolina, it's a little different down there because it gets so hot, number one.
Sure.
And here you celebrate summer. Summer comes, and you're so happy that summer's here to have a venue outside of music and whatever. I mean, you really, really do appreciate it, which is one of the great things about Rochester. So what are some of the other things you're doing?
Well, as you're probably very much aware of, Andy Galino is a great developer in downtown Rochester, took over the old Xerox Tower and the theater at Innovation Square, which used to be the Xerox Theater, where they had corporate meetings. And that venue holds about 700 people, and they've done a few shows there, and they're using it for all kinds of performing arts and meeting houses. And we've got a show scheduled for October with Steve Hackett, who was the guitar player in Genesis. And then we've got 2 or 3 other shows that we're hopefully going to announce very shortly and take advantage of that venue as well. It's a beautiful venue. It's clean. It's comfortable. They've done a great job putting a sound system in there that is top-notch. It's a great place to see a show when the summer's over, or even during the summer. Great parking underneath, so there's very reasonably priced parking in the underground garage. And you go there and you can take the stairs or an elevator up to the theater, and you're in good shape. Another thing we do is for the city of Rochester, who promotes it and gives us the financing for it, is Party in the Park, which takes place at Martin Luther King Jr. Park, right downtown Rochester, in the shadow of the 5-Star Bank building. Plenty of parking all around. There's parking garages, there's surface lots, and it's a great way to spend a Thursday night. It starts at 6 o'clock, goes till 10, and we have 2 bands each night this summer rather, and it's a summertime Thursday. It's a summertime thing, as my friend Chuck Prophet says in one of his songs. And it's just a fun thing to come out and be with your friends and meet new friends and hear some great music. And I think you're really going to enjoy the variety that we're going to present over this coming 6 weeks in July and August.
So what do you do in your spare time? He has no spare time. I can tell looking at your face. You have no spare time.
We take some time off, believe it or not, in between these things. We like to travel. Hopefully we'll be traveling again towards the end of the summer. We lost some travel time with COVID. And I have a good team that helps me put these shows on. So
how many people do you have?
We have 6 or 7 people full-time year-round right now.
For all you do, that doesn't sound like a lot of people.
Well, and then as the events get closer, for example, for Lilac, we'll probably have 150 people working for us. So there's a lot of local employment that goes on for all our shows, and it's good for the economy, and it gives back to the economy of Rochester, and that's one of the things that we really enjoy doing.
What's the toughest thing, and what's the most fun thing you do?
This year, the toughest thing has been programming the bands.
Really?
Yeah, it's there's an awful lot of competition right now in other places in the area and around the Northeast, and some of the bigger shows have what they call radius clauses. So if they hire a band in, say, Philadelphia, and you're within 300 miles, that band down there can't play within 300 miles.
Really?
So everybody wants to do well, and the band's prices have all gone up for like everything else. Right. So it's been tricky. It's been very tricky to get the right bands to field the format that we're looking for and to be able to afford them.
Well, that's an interesting point because, I mean, these days it's hard even to get a contractor.
Right.
Yeah.
Not much different style. But
I wouldn't have thought you would have had that problem. Did some people get out of the business during COVID?
Some did. Some decided to work less and charge more.
Okay.
They said.
Okay, so what's the most fun?
I think the most fun is when I look out and I see the people enjoying the show.
Yeah.
And I enjoy the show. I get a minute to take a break, and I look and I can hear the music, and I'm going, now I know why I hired these guys. These guys are awesome. But the bottom line for me is, even last night, I was on YouTube at like midnight listening to bands that friends of mine who I haven't heard. I was listening to Jeff Beck playing with Imelda May at this little club in New York where I've been, the Iridium. Whew. There's some strong shows. And I listen to my friends from Playing for Change, and I go, this is why I do this.
Right.
So it's a combination of listening to the music and bringing people together to have some fun, take a deep breath, forget about the problems they left at home, forget about the COVID that we've gone through. We're starting to get back to normal. You look at Lilac Festival, and I know this will happen again this year because it happened last year. Lilac Festival is the first outdoor event of the season. Typically, everybody has, cabin fever.
Right.
And they're just so happy to be out. Well, you combine cabin fever with COVID of the past.
Right.
And people are out seeing their friends, and they don't have to wear a damn mask. And they're just enjoying it, and they're smiling. And you're out in the park. That's what Lilac Festival is really all about. Whether you come for the music or the food or the race or the beer tasting or the wine tasting or the craft beer tent or whatever it is, people just take a deep breath and they go, this is why we're alive.
Just a little bit of joy, right?
Yeah, that's the great stuff.
A little bit of joy.
So I do want to mention before we wrap up the Partners for a Purpose.
Yeah.
So we realized talking to our sponsors, and we've always given back. We've always had, we always try to pay it forward at the Lilac Festival. When we do, we had a promotion a couple of years ago called Garden Battles. And the winner, we had TV and radio media personalities building a garden. And then the winner, the fans would vote for the best garden at the end of the festival. And the winner, we would give, I think it was $1,500 to the winner's charity. And then the second runner-up would get $500 to their charity. So we said, we started talking to our sponsors, and they said, well, yeah, we have charities that we all give to year-round, different not-for-profits that have a soft spot in our hearts for that charity. So we said, you know what? Why don't we recognize those sponsors who help? Not only do they give to the festival to make it possible to put on the festival, but they're also giving back to different charities in town. So we have this year, we're building what we call a giving garden, and people can buy an artificial flower for any amount of money over $1 and plant that on this pergola, if I'm pronouncing it right, and you plant the flower, the artificial flower, and at the end of the festival, we divvy up all the money that we raise that goes to the charity for those people who are working the festival tent.
Okay.
And we did it about 4 or 5 years ago with the Honor Flight, great organization in town, and they, in a different way, we planted American flags, and they raised $26,000.
Oh, great.
To send people, their vets down to D.C.
God bless you.
So we're hoping to beat that record this year, and it's a way that everybody can give back to different people in the community.
Well, Jeff, it's been delightful having you on the show. And I would
my
like to remind
pleasure.
everybody, Jeff is an inductee of the Rochester Music Hall of Fame, a great organization that we have here, invented by one of my friends, Carl Laporta. Just decided to write a letter in and say, hey, we should have a Hall of Fame. And now we have a Hall of Fame. So, and again, the tickets are on sale. You can go to rochestermusic.org to get the tickets. They start at $31. I guarantee you that you will enjoy the performance, if nothing else, to see Wheeze and Fred Costello, two of my new friends here, and I know you will be there.
Well deserving, those guys, absolutely.
Well deserving,
I
those
will
guys.
be there.
Yeah, you will
and
be there.
And the Lilac Festival is free. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
Oh, and you can find out all about the Lilac Festival at RochesterEvents.com.
RochesterEvents.com. So until next week, I'm Dom Genova. We'll see you here Saturday, 10 a.m. on the News Radio Wham 1180 show, the No Nonsense Roundtable.
Thanks for listening. Tune in 10 a.m. Saturdays on News Radio Wham 1180 or stream at wham1180.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll make more.